about to graduate from college, there were so many emotions: excitement, fear, uncertainty. And I was wondering what it was going to be like to enter the real world. Now, I put this in quotation marks because the real world, well, it ended up not being anything like how I imagined. But to understand what I mean, I have to bring you back to the year 2010. Now, I had just started my first real job. For me, I was a broadcast TV journalist, and I was thrilled to be sitting in my first team meeting. Now, on this day in particular, it was 9:30 in the morning, and all of us, TV reporters and TV producers, well, we walked into our conference room and we all took a seat. In my hands were my notes that I had just printed out and carefully prepared because I wanted to show my team, my manager, that I was a serious reporter ready to take on the big stories. But as I was sitting in that meeting that day, what I saw unfold was something I was not prepared for. My colleague to my right, they quickly kicked off the meeting by declaring what they wanted to do. The person to my left, well, they shared their opinions openly and loudly. Across the table from me, another colleague chimed in with their 2 cents. Within minutes, the entire room was bursting with people talking and commenting, and it was loud. But for me, I was just sitting there silently, looking around and just wondering when it would be my turn to speak. Do I raise my hand? Do I interject? Do I wait until everybody is done speaking first before I can say something? Before I knew it, that meeting was over, and people were starting to leave the room. And I sat there just thinking to myself, I didn't say a word. Now, the truth was, because I did not know what to say or how to say it, I simply said nothing. Now, for some of us, you may have experienced this feeling before as well, especially if you are a shy and introverted person just like me. But what I experienced that day is what I now call communications friction. One of the reasons why I felt this was because I realized I was living in what I call a world of dualities. You see, growing up in a traditional Eastern household, principles such as humility, respect, harmony, and to be a diligent hard worker, well, these were instilled in me from a very young age. And the saying was, be humble. Don't boast and talk about your work. Respect. Those older and more senior, well, they were always right. Harmony. Don't do anything that will disturb the status quo or draw attention to yourself. And be diligent, meaning put your head down and just do the work. Now, I was told over and over again that this was a recipe to be successful at work. But once I entered the real world, what I saw propelled people to become successful required an entirely different skill set. What was it? People who were great at communicating, who could do it clearly and confidently, well, they were the ones who advanced, got promoted, and frankly, they got paid a lot more money. Now, I found those who got the biggest projects, they were people who were great at advocating for themselves. Those who seemed to have the closest relationships with their managers, well, they were in fact the ones who were most confident and they could openly challenge and debate with their managers without sabotaging their career. And the truth was, I was warned. I was told that the real world, it was going to be very hard. But what I wasn't prepared for was to face inequality, hitting the glass ceiling, and having to fight biases of being an Asian American woman. So I started exploring. I put on my journalist hat and I started asking questions, including, why did I experience so much communications friction? Were my Eastern principles perhaps too soft? Were my beliefs, which were anchored in traditional Eastern principles, were they the right way to achieve success in the working world anymore? And this is what I mean. I was living in these world of dualities, East versus West. And so began a years-long journey of finding a balance. Because I wanted to find a way where I could honor the Eastern part of myself, which was weaved into the fabric of my identity, while simultaneously being able to set myself up for real world success. So today, I want to share with you the 3 things I learned along the way that transformed how I carry myself and how I approach communicating. The first thing I learned is thinking about building credibility. Now, this is not something reserved just for senior level folks. To build credibility, you have to do 3 things. You have to finish the work, you have to do it well, and you have to turn it in on time. But what is less talked about is credibility is incredibly fragile, and it is very easy to break. It's also something that needs to be earned and re-earned. But how do you do this? It's proactively communicating the process. It's understanding this fundamental principle. People generally don't like to be caught off guard at work. It makes them look unprepared and it can make them look bad. So, if things are not going as planned, don't react just by putting your head down and hiding behind your screen. Take that as a sign that it's time to communicate more, including looping other people into what's going on. If you master this, you will make other people feel like they are part of your problem-solving team. And frankly, it is so much harder to put the blame on you if other people already know about it. Another thing about building credibility is it is something that needs to happen every single day, not just in our first meetings with people. Solidifying your credibility means taking the first 5 to 10 seconds before answering someone's question to explain why you are qualified to do it. Stories are the most powerful ways to build relatability, which solidifies credibility. Now, the second thing that I learned about approaching communications is how to advocate for yourself and those around you. Now, for many of us, advocating for our community, for our friends, and for our family, well, it's second nature. We do it because we care. But when it comes to advocating for ourselves, well, many of us suddenly feel crippled and very uncomfortable. We don't like talking about ourselves and our achievements outright because it seems to violate this notion of humility. But the truth is, we have to. And we have to be strategic with our approach. So you can do this by communicating how what you are doing benefits the greater good. It is aligning what we want with our team's success. It's understanding that advocating, it isn't selfish or self-serving. We advocate because we care. And third, it's learning how to say no. Now, this is a tough one because for many of us, saying yes signals to our coworkers that we are a team player, and it ensures that we will be well liked. But saying no, well, it shatters all of it. Now, in some cases, saying no is a complete sentence. But in the complicated world of a workplace where personalities and pressures are all converging in one place, saying no may not always land well. So how can you do it? Well, it's all about how you frame it. You can do this by explaining why you're saying no, by offering options and being helpful in other ways. And when you do speak, you want to stay matter of fact with your tone. Saying no is all about doing it with tact. Now, the truth is, being a minority in the workplace is pretty tough. There are still days where I feel like I have to put on an invisible shield because I know I still have to fight a little bit harder and go out of my comfort zone to land opportunities. But instead of just dwelling in this sea of confusion and wondering whether I should do this or should I do that, or just feeling utterly stuck, I see that the answer has already been unveiled. And that is, you can actually leverage an Eastern approach in a modern workplace. As Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu once said, whatever is soft and fluid and yielding will overcome whatever is rigid and hard. In other words, it is marrying what's seen as hard with soft, East with West. It's these winning combinations that create the greatest competitive advantage. Because today, we live in a world that is more diverse than ever before. It's diversity in the way we think, in the way we work, and in the way we live.